today there's a focus on our sit bones. So those bony prominences, which is why it's important to have a firmer seat on the chair if you can. That if you just have a little bit of a wiggle about, and you'll feel them as well if you're sitting on the floor, the harder the surface, the more you're going to be aware of them. Just wiggling about and feeling those bony prominences that are right in the middle of your buttock. And just go over to one side, and I'm going to get you to try and switch on those muscles at some stage as well. So just dig your fingers in, and you'll find that it's the bottom of your pelvis. And that's what we call our sit bones. So nice work, nice to be working on the chair. So it makes us really think about our overall posture. Try and sit at the edge of your chair as well, so that you're not overly comfortable. You're definitely not using the back of the chair to relax and become too slumped. So let's just think about sitting up as tall as possible. Maybe close your eyes. Just take a couple of breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Noticing where the breath goes. There's my first rhyme of the evening. In through the nose, noticing where the breath goes. Out through the mouth. So as in where the breath is filling up, hopefully across the rib cage, sideways in the ribs. But most importantly, I want you to think about length in the spine. So let's just reach the arms up to the ceiling, trying to touch the ceiling, and just lifting and lengthening from that sit bone on one side all the way up through to your fingers. Hold both arms up, try and lift yourself off. You're not going anywhere, but think about actively lifting yourself off of the chair, and then lower the arms and lower your eye line. Brilliant. And then I'd like you to, if you have heightened your awareness of where your sit bones are, switch on the muscles around your sit bones. So it's your gluteal fold, the crease of your bottom, the smile of your bottom maybe, that area where you dug your fingers in just now if you did. Feel like you're activating the muscles around your sit bones and you're drawing them in towards each other. And you should feel a little bit of muscle activation, almost lifting you very, very slightly off of the seat. If you're in a padded seat, you might not feel it so much, but hopefully you can feel that activation. And then we're thinking about, and we're going to focus on this at the beginning of class and then repeat it again at the end. We're thinking about working all of the muscles in your lower abdomen around your pelvic floor. So you'll be lifting the pelvic floor as well. And as you draw those sit bones towards each other, you might feel that the pelvic floor, is activating. And then we're just making sure we're in a good neutral pelvis. I'm just going to turn slightly sideways. Well, I'm going to turn completely sideways actually. And then from a neutral pelvis, I would like you to just tuck your pelvis under, scoop your tummy in nice and tight. Take the weight, if you like, into the chair behind your sit bones, and then come through to the middle, through to a neutral position, a neutral pelvis, and then overarch the lower back and pitch slightly forwards. So you're in the middle, you've tucked under, and I'm really scooping out my tummy. In the middle, neutral, and then overarch the lower back to pitch forwards. So tucking the pelvis under, using the lower abdomen, so from your belly button to your pubic bone, that's the muscles that you're trying to use. You're not activating your buttock muscles. You might be switching on those sit bones to draw them towards each other a little bit, but not too much. Just taking that strong pelvic tilt. So in our general Pilates classes, this is how we form our C curve, and we're going to again visit this position later. I want you to feel that your tummy is really scooped. Brilliant. Okay, so let's go round in a circle with those sit bones. So you've taken the weight back behind them, go round the edge of one, forwards in front of both of them, round the edge on the other side. 3 or 4 in one direction. Trying to keep the weight through both sit bones fairly even. So the one you're going round will obviously be pushing down more into the chair seat. Try not to lift the other one up too much. And then changing direction. As always, one direction will be easier than the other. circling around, just really mobilising that whole pelvis and feeling like we're controlling this movement from our deep lower abdominals all around that pelvic floor area. Great, let's go into some hitches. So when you hitch, you lift one side, and I'm lifting my heel up, I'm pushing down into the floor on the other side a little bit, and I'm really shortening my waist on that one side, and then swapping sides. Shortening my waist, I'm shifting a little bit from side to side, because I need to in order to lift that hip up. In fact, if I take my arms out to the side, you can probably see it a little bit better. But what I'm not doing is leaning, so I'm not tilting in order to get that lift, I'm shortening in the waist. I'm going to put my arms to the side here. Yeah, so this is called a hip hitch. Great, the next movement we're going to do is a rotation around the spine. So just place your hands on the tops of your knees and use the floor to push and pull a little bit with your feet. So I'm rotating my pelvis around my spine, and now there's no change in the height of the hips. They're staying level with each other, but they're rotating around the spine, and I'm ending up with one knee in front of the other. And you can see that from my hands. Good, and the rib cage and the shoulders will join in a little bit with that. So quite often when we take a rotational movement, we sometimes combine the hitching or the leaning. This is pure rotation around the spine. So my head really stays in the centre. I can actually keep my ribs quite still if I put your hands around your ribs, elbows out to the side, and only rotate, isolate the pelvis. This is quite subtle movements, and your sit bones might be feeling a little bit almost, not sore, but you might be feeling even more aware of them now, because they're, especially if you're on a harder seat. Great, let's now take the rib cage around in a great big circle. So this time again, trying to keep the sit bones fairly evenly weighted. So if I turn sideways, the ribs are going back to the side, to the front, around to the other side, and then change direction. So mobilising the whole spine, keeping the legs fairly still. Really important to have the rib cage lifted off of the hips at this point. And one of my clients said to me one time that a seated class, a class on a chair, didn't really interest her because she'd been sitting in a chair all day, and I totally get that. But the idea of this is to use the chair to be able to anchor, for this movement especially, anchor your pelvis. I'm going to go around again, and then I haven't got to worry about my hips joining in with the movement because they're already sort of fixed by the fact that I'm sitting on the chair. But then I can get this lovely movement in the spine. From here, let's take our seaweed. So thinking about the sideways, the coronal plane, remember we looked at that last time, leading with the rib cage. And so I'm really thinking of leading with the side seam of my ribs. And so my spine is having this lovely seaweed wave from side to side. And then just let the head relax. And it might just roll, and sort of it's the last thing to catch up with the rest of the body, if that makes sense. Great, then let's continue to look at the, I'm going to turn my chair completely sideways. Continue to look at the mobilising the spine. So last week we did some spinal waves. We did it against close to the wall. So the wall was about here, about 6 inches away from my face maybe. I'm going to keep my hand here and sit from a seated position, take that same movement that we did. So you drop your chin down, you take your nose to the wall, your chin to the wall, your chest to the wall, and your lower back will arch, and then you come upright again. Chin down, nose to the wall, chin to the wall, chest and upright, and again. I'm going to take that hand away now. So think about my side seam, that's a beautiful straight line, my plumb line, just from seated, up the side seam of my tops, going all the way up there. I'm taking the whole spine bit by bit forwards of that, and then coming back to the plumb line being in the correct place. So we're mobilising that spine. Great job. Okay, wonderful. Let's look at some side bends while we're still in this mobilising, stretching thing. Actually, no, let's not do that first. Let's do arm circles first. So lifting the arm up. As you lift your arm up, I want you to lead with your little finger and follow the hand with your head and look behind you and circle the arm round behind you and then bring it forwards, palm up, and then turn. Lift up, little finger side, forwards, palm up. Stay on one side. Four or five of these. Keep the other hand on your knee, on its side knee, and notice when you're in the deepest part of this rotation, so we're rotating around the spine so that it's comfortable. So absolutely no leaning, sit bones equally weighted, but you will have that opposite knee really quite far forwards compared to the knee on the same side as the arm. Great, swap sides. So little finger up, brush past your ear. Just watch if you've got the back of the chairs getting in the way a little bit, just move over to one side. Palm forwards as you come up, and then swap it over. So it's sort of turning the shoulder around as well. Nice straight arm. Notice what's going on with those legs. Pause. And it's not just your legs, it's your pelvis, it's your whole body. Ideally, your spine is perfectly straight down the middle, perpendicular to the rest of the floor, and there's no leaning away. As you take the arm up, there's no leaning away to accommodate that because we've rotated with the shoulder and the hips. Brilliant. Let's take both arms up. So sorry, going up, so turn the palms away, take them all the way back, come forwards, palms up, turn all the way back. So this is our double arm circles, one of the 10 things to do every day. It's basically about rib cage, thoracic mobility, shoulder mobility. Try and be careful that you're not poking your head forwards in order to make this happen. And if that's too much with straight arms, just go to the elbow circling. Great, we're going to add on to this movement with some squats and like a hovering squat sort of thing. So open up the legs nice and wide, take your toes out slightly, so 2 minutes to 2 minutes past the hour, and then all I want you to do initially is just hinge from your hips. So if I turn completely sideways on, I'm just hinging and coming up. There is absolutely no change in the shape of my spine. The only thing that's happening is a little bit more creasing at the front of the hip. Really nice and upright. And then the movement that we're going to do, so it's quite a big, strong movement. We're going to take those arms up and back all the way. You're going to bring them forwards, palms up, and then you're going to transfer your weight forwards. And as you do that, tighten up those sit bones, draw those sit bones towards each other, push your knees out, and I just want you to hover your bottom off of the chair. Lower and take the arms back again. All the way forwards, hover, push down through your heels. So completely from the side. Whoopsie. The technical hitch going on there. Completely from the side. I'm taking my arms up, all the way back, hinging from my hips. My feet are underneath my knees, my ankles are underneath my knees, and just to here. I'm not trying to stand up, I'm trying to just hover. Switch those sit bones on, feel like you're drawing them towards each other, arms going up and over, hover the bottom, push down through your heels, push your knees out. And you should be able to stay there for a little period of time. Hold it. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and sit back. One more of those if you can. In fact, let's do 3 of these. 10, 9, 8. Switch the sit bones on. 3, 2, 1, roughly. Last one. So we're building some stamina and some endurance. Push the knees out, push down through the heels. Draw those sit bones towards each other. It's all going on, strengthening the back line of the body. Palms are up, shoulders are down, chin is tucked in. Hands, sit back and have a little rest. Well done. Great. Let's come back to facing forwards again for some nice footwork. So thinking about moving the feet and isolating the feet, getting the toes all working, independently of having to stand and worry about the balance. So it's quite nice work, this. So lifting all your toes up to start with, and then just relaxing your toes down. Lift all of your toes up. So bending at that toe joint, the metatarsal I think it is, and then relaxing down. Good, now lifting all the toes up. Keep your big toes up and put the other 4 on it both sides down, and then swap over. Big toes down, other 4 toes lifted. Big toes up and switch. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that is physically impossible. I don't even know where to start. And that will only be because the neural pathway from your brain to the right muscles in your feet just hasn't opened up yet. You might never have been asked to do that before in your life. But it will get there. Have a look at your feet. Imagine it. Know what you're doing. If you can do all the toes up and all the toes down, it's the next stage, is to just isolate. And you might find that your second toe joins in with that big toe, you can't quite separate them. The next stage is Mexican waves, but we're going to pass on that today. So keeping all the toes up, having your hands on your knees, all the toes up, and keep the ball of your foot sort of pushing into the floor a little bit. And then you're going to move the balls of your feet. So you can see I'm rucking up my mat. I'm not lifting and placing. I'm purposefully sort of sliding the ball of my foot along the floor. Knees are facing forwards, thighs are staying still. So we're rotating around the calf, the shin. Great strengthening, mobilising work for the lower limbs. All of that lovely walking that we're doing at the moment. Good, and let's go in, oops, but try and keep the knees still, and then out, in and out. Keeping that pressure across the ball of the foot with those toes lifted all the way through. Brilliant. I'm going to go slightly on a diagonal for some caterpillars. So we're going to lift the toes up to start with. You're going to scrunch the toes to the floor and then sort of dig your toes in, scrunch your toes so that you lift your instep, making a fist, and that will scoot your heels along. So you end up with your feet sort of walking away, caterpillar mode. So you're just slightly, legs are almost straight, and then come back the other way. Toes are scrunched, you dig your toes in, you unravel the foot. Scrunch, dig your toes in and unravel. So that's the reverse action. Going forwards again, scrunch and walk away. Good, and then scrunch, dig the toes in and lift the heels to come back. Brilliant. Okay, lifting up one heel at a time. And from lifting the heel up, lift the knee and just point the toes down to the floor and then swap to the other side. Lift the heel, point the toes and then roll through the foot to come back down. So chest nice and high, sitting up tall, ribcage lifted off of the hips. Good. Brilliant. I'm going to face forwards. Let's start to alternate this a little bit. So make sure you're sitting forwards at the front of your chair. So like a little jog. You can lean slightly back but stay in a neutral spine. No collapsing. Keep your pelvic floor lifted. Stay braced at the front. So just jogging lightly with those feet. You might just want to hold on to the edge of your seat a little bit. Good. And then we're going to open up the legs and then bring them back together. So the focus is almost up off of the floor. Great. So we're strongly working hip flexors. It's quite hard work. Brilliant. And come back again. And let's just finish off with some doubles. Jumping. Both knees lifting at the same time. Great. Open out the legs. And bring them back. And one more. Opening out. And coming back to parallel. Perfect. Okay, I feel like I want to just release my back a little bit from that last movement. So let's have the legs nice and wide. Let's take a great big chest all the way down. So chest lift, sorry, I missed off the second part of that name. And then a back lift to come back up. Lifting the chest, hinging from your hips all the way down. And whatever feels right for you with the arms, you could maybe leave them to hang as you come back up. For me it feels quite nice to just maintain that contact with my legs all the way down. One more. Hinging from the hip and then rolling back up. Great. Okay. Moving on to just stretching the side of the body. So the side seam. Just a classic side bend. And again, handy when you're on the chair. Think about the weight, the sit bones being equally weighted. Taking one arm up and then we're reaching over up to where the ceiling and the wall meet. The same side sit bone will want to lift. Really try and push it down into the chair. Great. And then let's just let that relax and roll. Come up in the middle, up to the other side. Other arm up and reaching over. Holding that there. Lengthening, pushing, actively pushing that sit bone down. It will want to lift. And just let that arm relax down, roll down into the centre, relax your head and then lift up. And again, 2 more of these. We're going to add on a little bit more each time. So up and over, and then just take hold of your wrist or your hand with your other hand and just add a little extra pull there. So really stretching on that side. Let go of the hand, roll down, come up in the middle and on the other side. Up and over. Really thinking about stretching down the side seam of your body. Take hold of the hand, lengthen away. Breathing nice and evenly. Let everything relax and roll down. The last one, we're going to take the arm up. We're reaching over. We're holding onto that hand and just lifting away. Now actively lift your hip up. You can lift your heel. So that same side, lift your buttock, lift your hip completely off the floor, off of the chair, and then push it down. Once you've got those other 2 parts of the stretch in place, really lower and push down into that side. Strong old stretch. Relax in the middle. One more. Last one. Up and over. Holding it there. Take hold of the hand. Just lengthening that arm away. Allow that hip to lift. For some reason when I lift the hip I really want to lift my heel as well. But that's fine. And then lowering the hip, the sit bone, and trying to apply pressure down into the chair. So although your body weight is over onto the other side, try and get the weight equal, if not more so. Great job. And relax and roll up. Fantastic. We are going to do some work just opening the legs out, coming into some lunges. So again, sitting at the front of your seat. So you're sort of perching on the edge. Opening up the legs into second. And let's just turn to one side. And as you turn to one side, keep one cheek, one sit bone on the chair, and it should be reasonably comfortable. Turn yourself completely to the side so that your hips and shoulders are square on sideways. And then we're basically in our perfect lunge position, almost. But let's just do that a couple of times. Let's do that 4 times. So opening the legs out. Depending on your flexibility in your hips, that might be a little bit uncomfortable, so just work through it. Make sure everything is facing forwards. Your forwards. So the narrow end of my yoga mat. And this time turn to the side. Let's hold it here a moment. And let's stretch out the front of the hip. But first of all, take your hand and find those sit bones. Find that bony prominence right in the middle of your buttock muscles. And again, switch it on. Draw it towards the other one. Push down into the foot that's at the front and onto the floor. And when you switch that buttock muscle on, or when you switch the muscle around your sit bone, you should feel a stretch at the front of your hip. And if you're not really feeling it, really keep it activated. Try and tuck the pelvis under a little bit. So from a neutral, I'm sort of relaxed there. So I've first of all switched on the buttock muscle, and then I'm trying to tuck under. It doesn't go very far, but it makes the stretch much stronger. So this is what we do when we're on our backs in the bridge, and what we're going to do later. So this is how important this activation is to open up the front of the hip. And again, let's swap sides. It's another one of our 10 things to do every day. So we're facing the other way, hips and shoulders square to your front. Find your sit bone, switch it on, draw it in towards the other one. It's quite a subtle, it's got much stronger for me since I've been working with this, but it's quite a subtle switching on. It's not the whole of the buttock muscle. Tuck that pelvis under a little bit if you're not feeling it. Great, and release and opening up. Fantastic, let's turn to the other side again. Turn to your first side. This time come off of the chair completely, but have your hand on the chair for support. So just taking some lunges here. And actually, once I get going, so some static lunges, so we're in the perfect position to be able to drop that back knee down to the floor and then fully straighten the legs. And now because I'm coming up, my hand is on the top of the chair, the back of the chair, and that gives me a little bit more support. You really don't need to go all the way down if that doesn't suit you, if that's not great for your knees, but do make sure you bend both knees equally, fully straightening the legs. All of that lovely knee work we've been doing recently will come into play here. It's strong work on the legs. Hips and shoulders square. Brilliant. Bending the knees. Let's now take that same hand, so the camera hand, the front hand if you like, all the way down to the floor. Slide the back leg back, really keep it nice and straight. Lift the furthest arm up towards the ceiling and take a nice rotation and breathe. So again, another hip flexor stretch and rotating the spine. Bring the hand through, maybe underneath your front arm, and then take it up again and rotate. Breathing all the way, and one more through and lifting up. Great. Last thing, put the hand, that's hand you have been lifting, the back hand back on the chair. Drop that back heel in, which will open up your hip. Then lift your chest, using the support of the hand on the chair, my back hand is on the chair, into a beautiful warrior pose. Really nice and square, and then open up your shoulders and take your arms away if you can. Maybe let's have a little lift up of that front arm into a bit of a back bend, and that's strong work. Come back onto the chair. Ooh, have a little rest. Good job, and then we're all on the other side with only a little rest. So we've just got the back hand on the chair seat. We're brushing that back knee to the floor. Then we're straightening the legs. So sorry, the back hand is on the back of the chair because you're higher up, because you're coming up higher. So knee brushes, straighten those legs. Just adjust as you need to. So what I like about this, and what I was seeing earlier in class, people's bodies were staying really nice and upright. You're not really tempted to pitch forwards and backwards. But this is strong work. That back heel is off all the time. Fully straighten those legs. Brilliant. And then bend the front leg. Keep the back leg straight. Take the front hand closest to the camera, next to that, opposite that foot. Take the back leg back a little bit. And the reason I'm taking it back is so that this front knee is above my ankle. Other arm is lifting up towards the ceiling. Back leg is straight, hips are down. Nice stretch on the outside thigh and hip. Thread the needle through. Follow the arm with your head. Breathe. Relax. Stretching through. One more. Maybe go a little bit beyond 180 if you can. Stretch it through. Great job. Place the hand on the seat of the chair. Drop that heel down, which will open up that hip. So hips aren't facing forwards now. My hips are sort of facing on the diagonal. Take the hand away if you can. You're in the perfect warrior pose. Holding that there, maybe lifting that front arm up. If this is too much, keep your hand on the chair seat. Great job. And coming up. Woo, give those legs a bit of a shake. Give everything a bit of a shake. That's quite hard work on the legs. Brilliant. But we're going to continue with some hard work on the legs. So we're coming up to standing. And you're just going to have one finger of one hand, your forefinger on one hand, as your support on the back of the chair. And then move the other leg. So move the other leg into some hip circles. So let's circle all the way out to start with. So really be aware that you've only got this one hand and one finger touching the chair. And then try and take this knee all the way across as much as possible, up as much as possible, out to the side as much as possible. We're mobilising in that hip joint. It's quite strong work on your standing side. Brilliant. And then change direction. So I went outwards first with my circles, and now I'm coming inwards. And for me this is a little bit clunky, coming inwards. So if you're getting a clunk every time you circle the leg, try and really lift the rib cage off of the hips, create that space. It might just be the way that leg is built. Watch that hand on the chair. So we want that so that your body hasn't got to, your brain hasn't got to worry about balance as well, and it's enough. Whew. Changing directions, change sides, change legs, sorry. One hand on the chair, circling outwards first. So the knee goes across as far as possible, up as much as possible, out to the side as much as possible. My standing leg is nice and straight. Not completely locked out. There's a little bit of give going on there. Shoulders and hips square to the front. Just the one finger. That's all you need. Great. Let's change direction. Outwards, up and over. And so those hips should be getting really nice and warm now. Second side, this is much harder because we've already worn this side out by standing on it for the first set. Oh, so a lovely bit of warmth going on there. Great, okay, we are moving on. Some more quite strong leg work. Thinking about that hip hinge action as well. So we're going to be, or do I need to do something else first? Yeah, okay, now let's take our hamstring stretch first. So we're going to come into this position, so you need to find where your feet need to be so that we can come into a wide-legged hip hinge in order to stretch our hamstrings with your hands on the top of the chair, quite wide if you can, or as wide as is possible, and then your feet are underneath your hips and you're going to hinge from your hips. So just set that position with your feet. So if you're too close, it won't work. Just the hands reaching the top of the chair. If you haven't got a chair, this can absolutely be done against a wall or a wardrobe door or something. And the next exercise can be done in the same way. So find out where those feet need to be, set that there, and then bend the knees, take a little roll up to come up to stand. 3 times. We're going to take the arms up at the side, palms facing each other. We're coming up into a really strong rise, holding that there. Then we're going to lower the heels. As we lower the heels, we're pitching forwards, hinging from the hips and holding that stretch and breathing. And it will be quite a strong stretch on the backs of the legs. Your spine should be in its natural curves. If you're up here, that's no good. I want your spine to be in its natural curve. So if your arms need to be a little bit higher, that's absolutely fine. Try and keep the arms by the ears. Bend the knees, tuck under. Let's go again. So nice strong rise and balance. Ankles really secure. Lower through the ball of the foot. Backs of the legs are getting a nice stretch. Holding that there. So this time just think about allowing your chest to lower through your arms. So you sort of get this armpit stretch, which should feel quite nice. And then just gently sway from side to side with your upper body. The hips stay fairly still, but you take your ear towards the inside of your arm. Great, and then bend the knees, rolling up. One more, last one. Beautiful balance here. Keep the arms by the ears. This is going to be really necessary for the next exercise. Lower your heels, keep those legs straight if you can. Find that biting point for your hamstrings. So remember, you don't really need to go any lower than 90 degrees. If you want more of a stretch, tilt in that pelvis. Send those sit bones away a little bit more. And again, the sway in the upper body, maybe turn your head this time. So just gently eking out a little bit more stretch, and then soften those knees and roll up through the spine. Brilliant. Okay, we are going to take one leg behind you. And you're going to take your arms up by your ears. And that whole thing is about creating this straight line from the top hand, the front hand at the top, all the way through your body. I'm just going to lift my camera up a little bit. Maybe lift this one up a little bit. All the way through your body. Actually, I won't bother too much with that one. Through your body to that back toe or that back heel. My standing leg is slightly bent, and my focus here is to hinge from my hip. I want you to take about 5 of these, and then by the time you've done your 5th one, we're aiming towards a capital T shape. So if you haven't got going, have a go already. So at least 5. Once you've reached the top of the chair, if you can, do another maybe 5 or so, staying in that position, staying in that shape. So it shouldn't change shape. So your upper body shouldn't reach, those arms shouldn't come away from your ears at all. That's picturing me over losing my balance as well. You're only going as far forwards as your leg goes up at the back. Aiming, if you can, to come into the capital T, which is your body, your torso, your arms, your back leg. I'm going to flex that foot parallel to the floor. When you've done 5 of those, we're going to bend and straighten that standing leg fully, if you can. My hands are just sliding down the outside of the chair, the back of the chair, so that my whole body, arms, shoulders, hips, leg, lift and lower as one solid platform, and then I'm going to bend that knee and come upright. Hard work on that standing leg and hip. Let's swap to the other side. Now this is my weaker side for keeping my hips really square. when I was practicing this the other day. So on this side, I really have to be aware that my hips don't open out. The leg that's at the back, that hip will want to open out, especially as you go deeper into it. So, arms up by the ears, all the way through. You don't even have to go into that capital T. You could just stay with this movement. This is a good, valid movement. You've got your standing leg bent, you're hinging over the hip, you're really grooving and fixing that movement pattern of the hip hinge. Getting to touch the top of the chair if you can. It might be that your chair doesn't particularly work well for this movement, but if you can get there, that would be amazing. You could have your fingertips at the wall or the wardrobe door, as I said earlier. Trying not to rely on the chair there. I just put a little bit too much weight in it and that made me quite unbalanced. About 5 of the full version, if you can. Whoopsie. I looked down to see whether my hips are square and that threw me off, but that hip was a little bit lifted. And now I'm going to take my 5 lifts and lowers, bending that knee, fully straightening that leg. That's the tough bit. Oh, keeping that back leg up, keeping your arms by your ears. Keeping that back hip, oh, not lifting, and we're there. Oh, quite hard work. Brilliant. We've got a little bit more hard work involving the chair, but not involving your legs, you might be glad to know. I'm going to keep my chair sideways on. I'm going to take some tricep dips. So sitting on the edge of your seat, with your bottom fingers facing forwards, get your hands on the edge of the chair and then just slide your bottom off, but open up your shoulders and your chest first of all. So with the fingers facing forward, so my chair's rounded, so it's slightly awkward, but try and have the fingers facing forwards if you can. Get your hips, your bottom off of the seat completely, and then you just bend your arms, but the back of your body just brushes the edge of the chair. Feet are underneath your knees. Keeping that head up, keeping the chest open, fully straightening. Get those elbows to go back. Don't let your body collapse forwards. Don't go too low. It's uncomfortable for the front of your shoulders. You'll overstretch them a little bit too much. At least 10 of these. I reckon I've done 8. I'm going to do another 5 or so. Tucking those elbows in. Not letting them splay out to the side. And when you would like to stop, do 2 more. Oh, there we go. Woo! Well done. Give those arms a bit of a shake. While you're looking at the next setup, do some sea anemones with your hands. So the next setup is being in a plank position with your hands on the chair seat. Maybe hands over the edge, maybe fingers facing forwards, whatever works for you. But get your shoulders over your hands and then take your legs out behind you. Have your legs quite close together, legs nice and straight, drop your hips down. You're in the plank, just not, just on a diagonal. And then from here, you're going to draw one knee in to touch the same side wrist or the lower arm and replace. Alternating legs. So if you feel like you're going to slip back on whatever you're using, or whatever's underneath your floor, your feet, sorry, make sure your shoulders are over your hands, drawing the knee in and extending. So try and make it like a squeeze. It's not a kick, not it's a squeeze. When you would like to stop, another 4 would be good. Maybe just pointing those feet each time, feeling the work in the abdominals, hopefully. Coming away, little twiddle of the wrists. Let's just make a soft fist. Keep your arms still and just circle at the wrist, 2 or 3 in each direction. Good. And some scrunches and opening out. Last one, same position. The difference is now you're going to twist your knee to your opposite arm. And again, squeeze. Try and take the knee to the outside of that arm. So you're really twisting across. Shoulders, ribs are staying fairly still. The twist is happening at your waist, at your hips. Keep the arms straight but not completely locked out. Pointing that foot just looks pretty, but it's not overly important. Again, when you'd like to stop, another 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do 1, 2 more. And relax. Fantastic work, everyone. I hope you're as worn out as I am. I'll get in there. I think we deserve a lovely little lie down on the floor. So let's get the chair out of the way. So lying in your base position. So as I said earlier, we're focusing on the sit bones at the beginning of class, which we did when we were sitting on the chair, and again here. And just that whole lower abdominal area. So this work is reasonably subtle. First thing we're going to do though is take a bridge, so feet and knees together. And then we're just going to switch on the buttocks, lift the hips up into a nice straight bridge. Make sure the ribs are relaxed and soft, head and shoulders relaxed. Squeezing the feet and the knees together. It's quite an uncomfortable position. I find it really quite difficult. If you're tight at the front of your hips, this is a difficult position. And then we're just going to open up the knees very slightly. When you open up the knees, switch on at your gluteal fold, and you will find miraculously that your hips can go tiny little bit higher. Keep the gluteal fold switched on. Don't let this, so those sit bones drawing towards each other. Don't let that switch off, and squeeze your knees together. Open the knees up a little bit. You'll go a tiny bit higher. Squeeze the knees together. 10 of these. Lift up. As you open up the knees, squeeze the knees together. You might find there's shaking and quivering going on the inside thighs, and that's just a general lack of stamina. Perfectly normal. This is tough work. This is targeting all those intrinsic deep muscles which we don't really ever have time to build the stamina in, or we don't have time to do much strength work with them. That's what this is about, stamina and strength. Squeeze those knees together, and miraculously I feel like my hips have gone up another 2 inches. They probably haven't, but it just feels like they're going higher each time. Woo! And I think that's about 10. Now I'm going to open up my toes slightly, and then open up my heels slightly. So my feet are parallel and slightly apart, but not quite as wide as hip width. Again, now because those knees are wider, legs are further apart, I switch on that gluteal fold, my sit bones, and I can lift those hips up even higher again. And I'm really opening out the front of my hips. Now we're just going to squeeze the knees together and open them out to that parallel position. Knees together, open them out. You will be feeling quivering and shaking, I'm sure. I'm definitely feeling it. But it's all good work. So going back to our 10 things to do every day. Another couple of these if you can. 3 or 4, 10 in total. This is one of the 10 things to do every day. This is the moving the legs, the adduction and the abduction of the legs, working those inside thighs. It's all linked together. When you've done that last one, let's take the arms up and over to the floor. Leave the arms there, hang on to a branch, and reverse peel. All the way down. Then bring the arms over, and then hug your knees in Just have a little roll around on your lower back. But what I feel now is that I'm actually getting a stretch. I feel like I'm stretching out those muscles around my gluteal fold, muscles around the sit bones, those ones we've been switching on all that time. And that actually feels quite nice. Good. So moving on into something a little bit more subtle, again with the focus on the lower abdominals working. So we're going to take an exercise here where we're going to be working in imprint. And when you take your imprint, so from a neutral pelvis, so this is me in neutral, I've got quite a big gap between my lower back and the floor, but my pubic bone and my hip bones are absolutely on a level with each other. I'm going to tuck under, imprint my lower back, push that lower back into the mat as hard as I can. Now my pubic bone is higher than my hip bones. My tummy is scooped and taut like a drum. I haven't switched on my buttock muscles, but I can, in this position, think about sliding those sit bones towards each other, and I can think about activating pelvic floor in this position. And it's a sort of strong but soft position. It's quite weird. I want you to hold that imprint, hold that pelvic tilt, and then you're just going to bend both knees in and keep the knees there. And just dangle your feet, just jiggle your feet a little bit. So the legs are relaxed. Holding that imprint, using all those muscles. So drawing the sit bones towards each other, lifting the pelvic floor, actively pushing the lower back into the mat. And we're just going to take toe taps down to the floor. And alternate. If it's too much to alternate, as in switch, one's coming up whilst the other one's going down. If it's too much, just do one at a time. So this is quite a short lever. Hopefully it's relatively easy to stay imprinted with that lower back. But as we progress, we're going to make it harder. So we're trying to build the endurance. But if it starts to feel uncomfortable, if your lower back starts to feel like it's going to lift off the floor and you can't hold that imprint anymore, there's another rhyme, then take it back a stage or just stop and have a rest. Especially if your lower back starts to feel a little bit achy. Because if you don't train in this way, if you don't take time to build endurance, then there won't be any endurance in the muscles, there won't be any stamina there. But that's what we're working towards. So now let's change it a little bit hard, make it a little bit harder. Each stage is getting significantly harder. Interlace the hands at the back of the head, elbows out to the side. Now lift the legs up into a normal knee fold position. If we were doing a regular Pilates class and you were able to, I would like you to be in neutral here, but we're not wanting neutral, we're wanting you to maintain that imprint, which is quite tough. Legs are at a right angle, the feet are up just above the knees, shins are parallel to the floor. Same thing, switching those legs, staying imprinted. The reason we've got the hands behind the head and the elbows on the floor is to add a little bit of extra ballast to that upper body. So it's helping you to maintain that imprint. Switching those legs. It's quite grippy on the hip flexors as well. If this is all okay for you, take it on another level. Let's extend one leg at a time. Keep them at 45 degrees. If this really does feel like your lower back is going to arch and you're going to lose control or it's getting uncomfortable, take the straight leg up towards the ceiling so that it helps you to push that lower back in. Absolutely don't take the legs too low. We don't want that. You want no lower than 45 degrees. Or have a break or take it back a stage. So we've lengthened the lever, we've lengthened the leg away from the centre, is making it harder. We're going harder still. Legs are straight and you're going to scissor them. Take them up a little bit more. Keep them straight, keep the feet pointed. Really keep them straight. I'm still pushing that lower back into the floor, trying to create extra weight there, extra pressure through the floor. I'm trying to draw my sit bones towards each other, but that bit's gone a bit out the window, I have to be honest. So I'm mainly focusing on the pressure of the lower back in the floor. Add, last bit, grand finale, a very small switch, elbow, opposite elbow towards the knee. Try and stay up. Keep pushing that lower back in, keep those legs nice and straight. Woo. Opposite elbow to knee. Brilliant, and relax down. Hopefully head wasn't hurt, the neck wasn't sore at all because we didn't really do any work there. But maybe just roll those legs around, massage that lower back, both directions. So one more exercise here, one last exercise. Legs bent in again, lower back imprinted, pelvic floor lifted, sit bones squeezing towards each other. Squeeze your knees and your feet together as well. Hold all of that tension in those muscles and just slowly squeezing your knees together, switching those sit bones on, sliding them towards each other, lifting the pelvic floor. Slowly lift your feet up towards the ceiling. Knees and feet squeezing together. Don't try and straighten the legs, that's not the point of the exercise. Just get up almost straight and then lower the knees at the same rate. Counting to 10 to go up, counting to 10 to come back down. We're going to do 2 more sets. Lower back is pushing in. Sit bones are squeezing together for all your worth. Lift your pelvic floor a little bit internally, up towards your head. Squeeze the knees together, squeeze the feet together. Keep everything going. Almost straighten those legs, but it's not about straightening the legs. It's about moving slowly. It's about building this endurance. Last one, work as hard as you can. Push that lower back in to the floor. Try and break through the floorboards. Squeeze your sit bones together. Lift the pelvic floor. Squeeze your knees together. Squeeze your ankles together, your insteps. Lower with control. Work even harder. Keep everything switched on. There will be shaking. And whoo, relax. Well done. Roll over onto your side. Oh, come up onto all fours. Look at that, exactly 1 hour. We are almost there, apart from just a little bit of a wiggling about, because it would be rude not to, it always is. So come onto all fours. Do what you instinctively would quite like to do. I want to take my hips back on my heels. I want to have a sway from side to side. I'm going to take my sit bone circles. I'm going to curl my toes under, lift my hips, push my chest back through my arms. I'm going to take some bear walks. I'm going to walk backwards. I'm going to take some sexy bear, crossing the foot over. Feels really nice. Maybe a sexy bear walk and the opposite hand reaching forwards, which is slightly odd. And then maybe the same thing going backwards. It really doesn't matter. Whew. Coming up, finishing in a kneeling position, otherwise I'd have to move the cameras. Thank you so much for joining me live at 5. My mum started this class as well. I don't think she finished it. It was great to have you here, Mum. Thank you and see you again.